What's up guys, MaksWerks here, and today we have a 96 DR650. This bike is actually not mine, I didn't buy it. It's for a friend of mine who doesn't have a garage space to work in, and he hasn't told his wife he's bought a supermoto yet. So we're actually going to go through this and clean it up for him so that when we're done it's going to be ready to ride. There's a few little electrical things. The bike hasn't been ridden in about a year, so we got to take care of the carburetor and general stuff like that. So a little bit about the bike. If you've never seen one of these big off-road bikes in person, this bike makes less power than my KTM, but weighs almost 70 pounds more than it does. Because everything on this bike is big and metal and heavy as shit. So it'll be interesting. First time I've ever worked on one of these, but we get it done all the same, I think. So let's get to it. The first kind of oddity is to take the seat off. You have to actually pop these side fairings off, and then there's two 12 millimeter bolts, one on each side. You have to take off to remove the seat, which makes it a huge pain if you got to take this off on the trail or something, because this doesn't even have a kickstart, so you're basically stuck on electric start only. So there's the seat, and underneath the seat you can see that this bike actually looks a lot less like a dirt bike and a lot more like a full-on street bike, which is closer to what it is. So it's actually got a full-size battery, and what we're going to do is we're actually yank this battery out. I have a new one that'll go in here, and then we'll just recycle this one for another project. Since this bike's been sitting for over a year, we're actually going to take the gas tank off and drain it, which will give us access to the top of the cylinder head. We can check the spark plug and so on and so forth. So to remove the gas tank, you have two 10 millimeter bolts right here. We just pull them out, pull up the gas tank, and then we got a bucket over here, and I'm going to just drain off all the gas into it from the pipe pack. If this is what came out of your body, you need to go see a urologist immediately. But this is what came out of the gas tank, almost 2 gallons worth of this crap. So we're going to trash it and clean out the carburetor and the rest of it, and then put in fresh gas. 9 times out of 10, this right here is your biggest problem. So there's our Canon filter. So you take out that screw, and that allows you to remove the filter. We're going to let this soak for a while we do some other work on the bike, because it's pretty fucking filthy. So Canon makes a $10 kit of aerosolized oil and their own kind of cleaner. I found that this works a lot better on their oil than like standard dish soap. And this kit right here is 10 bucks, and you can do probably 20 or 30 filters at least with it. So if you're going through a lot of bikes like I am and you use a lot of Canon air filter products, these are a must-have for the garage. The other interesting thing about this engine is it actually has 2 spark plugs to help with combustion, and they're both right here on the side. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to probably an air temperature sensor. Yeah, that's what that is. So this goes up to the vapor. This is the temperature sensor because this is air cooled, so it actually just bolts in underneath the spark plug. What we're actually going to do is I'm going to pull this out right here. And we're going to pull out these plugs, and we're just going to take a look at them, and if they're clean, we'll stick them back in, and if they're not, we'll sand them down a little bit to make sure that, you know, they're good working condition. So this is the little thermocouple that sits between the block and the spark plug for the Trail Tech Vapor, because I haven't done an air-cooled engine yet on my own, so this is the first one, so you guys can see what the looks like. And here's our primary plug. We got an NGK CR10EK. I don't have any of these, so I can't replace it. What we're going to do is we're going to clean it up a little bit with a piece of sandpaper and stick it back in there. Next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to take care of the valves before we move to the carburetor. So these are 2 valve caps, and underneath there's going to be some rocker arms, and we're going to be able to use those. So you can either spend 30 bucks on the Motion Pro set, or you can make your own little tool for undoing these little square pieces. They're about 3 millimeters, so the cut needs to be about 3 millimeters wide. So now we're actually just going to go ahead and finally set And again, the way you want to do is you want to slide it in there. Then you want to tighten this down by hand. And basically just, you want to be able to move this smoothly, but you want there to be a little bit of drag in there. And normally what I do is I'll make sure it's where I want it to be. And then once it's there, I'll go ahead and just tighten it down while the feeler gauge is still in there. And then I'll work the feeler gauge loose. That way you don't over tighten it on accident. Or if you have this tool that you built, you can also use that to make sure that you don't over tighten stuff as well. So that's it. We did one. Now we're gonna go do the other side real quick. Then we're gonna move on to the exhaust. All right, now we can finally get to the carburetor. And to remove the carburetor, you have two screws, one right here and one right over here on the airbox. And then of course you have your 10mm throttle connection, so we're gonna have to take those off first. Then we're gonna remove the carburetor and clean it thoroughly. So, in my constant pursuit of giving you guys the best possible videos, I have adopted this head rig, which will hopefully allow me to work on carbs and kind of walk you through them as well as I'm going along here. So first of all, this is a flat CR can unit, and it is it's on this side actually. It's a 45mm unit, and if you're in the market for one of these bikes and you think this is what you're going to get, you're very much wrong. This is clearly an aftermarket edition one of the previous owners did, because this bike comes stock with a pretty shitty BST 40 carb. I mean, not shitty. The nice thing about the BST is, just like this bike, you can find parts and accessories for the BST pretty much anywhere in the world, and they're very inexpensive, whereas this is more of a race carb and probably came off of a 450 level supercross bike. Something like that is going to come with a carburetor like this. And so now we're going to do our general thing. You can see there's a little bit of green. Whatever gas they were using in here had a lot of ethanol in it. That's what causes the green color. So we're going to clean this out, break it down, and reassemble it like we do with all the carbs on this channel. So let me get some tools and we'll get started. Alright, so we're going to start up here and simply undo these bolts, and this will let us take a look at the needle and the slide to make sure that they are in good shape. So let's see. These are what? These are 3mm bolts. There's a little paper gasket up here, and what happens is you actually slide this up, and you can remove the entire slide if you want. I'm not so concerned because these slides are usually really good for a long time. But what you want to do is you want to pop this, and it's not uncommon for it to be really, really tight like this one was. So what you want to do is you want to take this off, and this is just a little cap. And out of there will come a bunch of gas because the needle is no longer blocking it. And here's our needle. Overall, let's see, I'm going to grab some paper towels here real quick because this shit will eat through my workbench. So let's see. Also, you have to be very careful when you take this apart. Different carbs are different. Some of them have extra washers and springs and stuff in here. This one apparently doesn't. So just for record keeping, that looks like the third notch from the bottom. And there's a little bit of gunk buildup on it, and we're going to try to get some of that off. But all in all, you really want to get stuff like this off because you can actually feel that with, I mean, you can't feel it, but I can feel it with my finger. And you really don't want that. Like I said, we're going to have to clean some of this off so I can give you guys the spec on this needle. So there we go. This is clean now, and you can see if I run my finger smoothly through here, you can see where it was, but this is now all smooth. So the needle is going to slide up and down very smoothly. And as far as the needle itself is concerned, it's a 0CEMR needle. And so now what we're going to do is we're actually going to reinsert the needle and reassemble this top part, and then we're going to move to the bottom to the bowl. So on the underside, this is our fuel adjustment screw. And so this right here is 0. So we're going to twist it in all the way so that we can figure out how many turns it was set to. So that when we reassemble it, we can assemble it the same way. And one of the downsides is this isn't a bike I'm particularly familiar with, and so I don't know about this mod, because I'm sure that using this sort of carburetor on this bike is fairly common, because the BST40 is a piece of junk in relation, but I don't know what the correct settings for this carb are, so we're going to leave all the jets, everything stock, and the new owner can deal with it when he gets there. So let's see, there's a half a turn, there's 1 turn, there's 1.5 turns. We'll call that 1 3/4 turns, which is pretty normal for this elevation here in Texas. So we're actually going to unscrew this now so that we can remove. And there you go, you can see that it's got a little bit of gunk on it. And in here, of course, there's going to be an O-ring and a little washer on the end of this. There always is. But we're going to remove those after we remove the bowl. So to remove the bolt, you just break these 3 bolts loose, and we're actually going to take apart and clean the accelerator pump, which is this unit right here, but we'll do that after we remove the bowl from the carburetor, just to make it a little bit easier. So over here this is going to soak out some of that ethanol for a minute. So now we got the bottom of the carb here, and as always, this is going to be our main jet, this is going to be our pilot jet. So I have a slightly modified screwdriver that will fit down there. So we can remove the pilot jet, and we're just going to clean these out with brake cleaner and compressed air. Nothing too extreme. And one of the other things is right here, you can see that there's a spring right in here, and this is for this guy. This sits right in here. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to set that in there for a second so that all the other stuff doesn't fall out when I go to pull the pilot jet out. So there's our pilot jet. It is a 52 pilot. And now if we remove the main jet, unfortunately that seems to have come out with the main jet holder, which is alright because we just take our 8mm right here and basically our 6mm, so the camera can see it. If we set that in there and we set this out here, and we can just break that loose like that, and we're going to thoroughly clean all of this. But this main jet is a 160 main jet. We're also going to take off this right here, and for that we need a Phillips screwdriver. Now all this screw does is it holds the float in place. So if we remove that screw and we remove the float, we can see that this right here, which is the what controls gas coming in and out, we're going to clean this guy out a little bit, but since I don't have a new one, I'm not going to pull it out and risk damaging. There's a gasket right here. So we're just going to clean all of this out, and then just reassemble it the same way that it was. So now we're on to the accelerator pump, and the accelerator pump, or AP, what it does is it's that initial squirt of fuel when you first crank the throttle. So if you're having bogging issues, or if you're having like really hard, like if you try to launch the bike and you're having all kinds of trouble with basically real low-end bogging, or if you snap the throttle and the bike just dies, normally those problems are linked to the AP, and what happens is a lot of times it's that initial little squirt of gas, and if it's either squirting too much gas, or if it's squirting the right amount of gas but it's taking too long, or it's not squirting enough, you run into all kinds of issues. And all it really is a little diaphragm and a little cap and a little spring. And the way you change the amount, how quickly the fuel is released, is by changing the length of this little knob right here. And you can buy different ones. The Honda is by far the longest and has the fastest one. The KTM ones tend to be a lot slower for whatever reason. So like in my 525, I replaced it with a Honda unit, and I have much better throttle response. So as far as what's going on in here, you basically have this little shaft right here comes down, and this, so whenever you crank the throttle, the first thing happens is it pushes in here, and it goes up through here, and it squirts a little bit of gas down the intake to get the engine ready. And then as soon as it burns that up, by the time it burns that up, you're already on the main jet, and it's got plenty of gas. So all you really want to do here is you want to blow out all these passages, make sure that they're all clean, and then reassemble it as it is. Again, I don't know which one this is, but what you can do is you can actually just measure this distance right here with a caliper. So we can see that this one is about 9 millimeters. So this is probably a Honda unit because I believe the one in mine is also 9 millimeters. But anyway, we're going to just blow all this out, put it all back together, put it back in the bike. That's all there is to this part. So there we go. New turn signals, taillight's been checked out. Got all the rear wiring done, so we can actually reassemble the back end of the bike if we want to. So now we're going to move to the front. Unfortunately, a lot of the wiring that was done on here is somewhat amateurish. As you can see, there's a fucking mess back here. So we got to figure out, we got to set this up to do high beam, low beam, so we can pass inspection, as well as rerouting some of these wires. Also, they broke the starter switch, so we need to order a new one of these and figure out where this goes and what kind of plug it has on it so that we can disconnect it and connect something different in its place. So this is the clusterfuck we got up here, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out what all these wires correlate to. We're going to take care of this turn signal resistors. We're going to make this a high beam, low beam type setup, and hopefully clean this up a little bit. And the other thing that's important is when you're doing this sort of work, you really want to make sure, I have a notepad over here out of the camera, but I'm going to be writing down every single thing that I figure out. So if I know that black and black-white are the two turn signal colors, that's what they're going to go into my book as. And as always, everything's going to get soldered, heat shrink, and everything else to make sure it's neat and tidy. And then we'll zip tie it all together, put the rest of the bike back together. I'm going to put in a temporary button starter because the new one won't come till tomorrow. And I'll put in, and I'll figure out where the horn is. We won't be able to hook it up because it won't come in until tomorrow. But those aren't really critical things for the video. The other thing I see a lot of is people using these connectors on motorcycles. These are not automotive grade connectors, and they cause corrosion and rust and grounding issues and all sorts of shit. Just please stop using them on your vehicles. Okay, so we have our two resistor blocks for our turn signals, which now work. So this ignition's kind of still sticky, but there we go. So if we turn on, you can see there's one, there's the other one. I found the horn connection. We have now a high beam and a low beam. Not that either one of them produce very much light, but that's not the point. This main harness in here, so this is actually the brake. The brake sensor down here is broken, so we'll have to get another one, but this is for the brake. This is the main power harness, and what you see going on here is this yellow green button or wire is the starter, and it's hooked up to plus 12 volts right here. So when we hit my little temporary starter button, the bike will start up. So that's what we're going to use to test in a moment. This orange and white wire is actually the safety wire. It has to be connected to plus 12 in order for the bike to actually run. Otherwise it cuts spark. So if this is disconnected, so if you're running an on and off switch, this is what you want. Our on and off switch is actually run through this ignition already. So using a secondary kill switch is kind of pointless. Same way I have it on my KTM. So to save time and money, we're just gonna jump around that. So at this point, I got pretty much everything I need to done up here on the electrically on the bike. And so now it's simply a matter of getting all of this back together, and then we can put some gas in it and see if it fires. So now I got the bike all reassembled. It actually fires up. So I'm gonna let it warm up here in a minute, drop it off the stand, and then do a quick oil change, and then we should be done with this bad boy. And here's kind of the teaser on that 650. God, what a fucking tractor. This thing's got torque for days, but it just does not accelerate very hard, does it? In fact, I'm pretty sure this bike seems most comfortable at about idle, which kind of makes it like my pickup truck.